Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce RTX 4070 Ti Super in Stalker 2, Stutter 2 lag of Chornobyl. This one is the MSI Ventus 3X version of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers, and I am manually overclocking it just a little bit because this is on average 2% slower than the other 4070 Ti Super for some reason. This way, it is pretty much the same as them. And over in Tech Power-Up's GPU Z, you can see all of the GPU specs. Resizable bar is also enabled. We got 16 gigabytes of VRAM in this GPU, which is nice. And over on the left, I'm pairing it with a Ryzen 9 7950X 3D CPU with half of its cores disabled, making it the same as a 7800X 3D and 32 gigabytes of RAM. Let's play the game now, shall we? And we're here, let's go over the settings first. I am starting at 1080p resolution, and I'm also going to test this one at 1440p and 4K, and I'm using the Epic Settings preset with DLSS set to DLA8. So it is still running at 100% resolution scale, native 1080p, just applying the anti-aliasing from DLSS over it. Frame generation is turned off, and I'm using, well, Epic Settings, everything else, of course. Let's do this. And here we are, getting around 70 frames per second in this settlement area, but notice that the GPU usage isn't maxed out, so it's actually a CPU bottleneck even with a 4070 Ti Super and a 7800X 3D. This is how intensive this game is on the CPU side of things. Now, if you go out of the settlement area, it becomes way less CPU bound, okay, and you can actually see that our 4070 Ti Super is now maxed out at 98-99% most of the time. Sometimes it fluctuates because this game stutters a lot and it has an inconsistent frame time graph, but yeah, you can get like 90 FPS around here, which is pretty decent. Obviously, it's still very bad for a 4070 Ti Super at 1080p resolution, right? It should be performing a lot better. Stop it! God damn it! No. Okay, but hey, this is a UE5 title, as you probably know already. It's also a very, very demanding one, and it's broken, and it needs some serious optimization patches, which still haven't come, okay? So there's that, guys. If you have this GPU at 1080p resolution, which you shouldn't have, I think like 1440p is the sweet spot for this card, or even 4K in some games. Well, yeah, you can max out the game at 1080p resolution without any issues. Now, if you have a big CPU bottleneck, imagine you have a slower CPU than this one, like a 7700X or a Ryzen 7 5800X 3D, you will see a little bit lower FPS at 1080p resolution especially, and that's where frame generation saves the day, kind of, because it allows you to get even higher FPS and mitigate that CPU bottleneck by a lot, as you can see. Instead of getting 70 FPS and 60 sometimes and being CPU bound with that frame rate, we're now getting 120 plus frames per second in this area right here, which is pretty decent. You know, it's smooth, it's very playable right now. It's high refresh rate, obviously, but still not what I would utilize, because 1440p is where this shines the most, and even 1440p quality plus frame generation looks better than 1080p native resolution. So there's that. I'm gonna start counting our FPS here. 1% lows are still pretty crappy, guys. We see a lot of stuttering happening. I think with the AMD GPUs there's less stutter, although they perform a little bit worse compared to their Nvidia competitors in this title. The frame rate is overall lower, but it just felt a little bit smoother with the 6800 that I tested earlier today. I also tested high settings there instead of Epic Settings, so that could be it. Obviously, it comes down to optimization, and the developers should definitely take a look at this and try to fix it. Yes, there we go. Got that guy over there. Now let's get this one over here. Oh, there's a guy over there. Okay. What the heck? All right. Is there somebody else? I think so. Yep. There we go. Got him. Good stuff. Let's go inside. Flashlight. Nobody else inside. It feels really good here with these FPS and the frame generation. I can feel a little bit more input lag than native resolution, you know. Well, it's still native resolution, but then native frames without frame generation. But with these FPS, 150 on average, there's no problem. If you have this GPU, play the game with these settings. I think I would actually recommend these settings since it doesn't drop the FPS too much in those settlement areas. And over here, it's a proper high refresh rate experience, guys. So feels really good. Let's stop it right there and let's try it at the 1440p resolution, the target res for this GPU. So here we go, we're at 2560 by 1440 resolution, still with the epic settings, 100% resolution scale with DLEA. I disabled frame generation again, and let's see how it does now. 70s. Yeah, it's still very good for what this is. It's a totally unoptimized game running a very intensive engine with software ray tracing always turned on, and that's super taxing obviously on everything. So it's, oh my, okay, we need to restart because it's having some flickering issues because of the frame generation. Whenever you turn it on and turn it off again, it has those issues. Okay, it's very annoying. And back here in the settlement area, we're getting 60 plus still, guys. Look at that, 70 sometimes. Yeah, 60 flat there for a second. Maybe it's gonna drop into the 50s, but if it does so, it's only for a couple of seconds maybe, or a split second. It's only one single FPS drop as a minimum, you know. So it shouldn't really matter too much. If you really want 1440p native resolution in this game, it's going to be possible. Who is playing copyrighted music? Are you Bob's friend or something? Shut up. Shut up. I missed 2 shots. I'm terrible. Okay, I'm sorry. Also, I think it dropped a little bit there while we were trying to shoot at the guy, right? I felt a little bit of a slowdown at least. But yeah, you can actually have, most of the time, 60 plus FPS. And look at that average. Absolutely perfect, isn't it? 69? Not anymore. God damn it. Anyway, this works pretty well. And I think this is the GPU that you need for 1440p epic settings. 99% of the time above 60 FPS. 4070 Super couldn't really do it, obviously. It was around 60 on average, I believe. This one has that little bit of a performance boost over the Super or the TI. And it also has more VRAM, which is very nice as well, although right now it's not really utilizing a lot of VRAM, but maybe at 4K it will make a difference. But yeah, guys, even if you are in the most intensive settlement area over here, it shouldn't really drop unless it becomes CPU bound and unless you have a slower CPU as well. As you can see, as I approach the settlement, it drops into the low 50s, but we also saw GPU usage fluctuating there while that happened, so it's just loading something. It's probably CPU related. I don't know. Ultimately, it's just optimization issues, basically. I really didn't expect this game, before I first started playing it, of course, to stutter so much, because it actually compiles the shaders beforehand. Every single time you launch it, it has the shader compilation feature going on. And usually when games have shader compilations that take as long as this one does, about a minute or 2 sometimes, it depends. Obviously, if you have it installed on a hard drive, it's like 20 minutes, I think. But yeah, usually that fixes most of the stuttering issues. But here, this game does have that shader compilation feature, and it still stutters quite a lot, right? It never dropped to 44 FPS, and the 1% lows are at 44 FPS. And look at that. I mean, what is happening? Why did we have that huge stutter? It's really annoying, guys. It's really annoying. Anyway, it's modern gaming, I guess. And since we had 60 plus FPS as a baseline, you can actually enable frame generation over native resolution without the need to use quality DLSS, for example. And the input lag shouldn't be too bad, okay? So yeah, as you can see, it gets 100 plus FPS still with the frame generation enabled. Yeah, it feels decent. Actually, this frame generation from Nvidia compared to AMD's frame generation feels quite a bit better, having tested the RX 6800 earlier today and comparing it a little bit with these FPS as well, although that GPU was at 1440p high settings, quality FSR plus FG to achieve around these FPS, and I think it still achieved slightly lower. This is obviously just frame generation over epic settings and native 1440p resolution. That was a nice little kills over here. Anyway, let's drink an energy drink again. Good stuff. And let's go to the settlement area again. Also, once again, if you have that CPU bottleneck and you're seeing the FPS dropping into the 50s or 40s in the settlement area, it's a good thing to enable frame generation over native resolution here at 1440p. You don't really lose any visual fidelity. Maybe it's just ever so slightly softer than it would otherwise be with native res without frame generation, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's going to look really, really nice, and it's going to be, well, the smoothest that it can be. It's still not smooth because the game stutters, but hey, that's not the GPU's or the CPU's problem, right? It's just the game's problem. Now over here it's dropping into the lower 90s with those couple of stutters happening. Yeah, it is solid, it is playable. I would have no problems recommending either this or the native resolution. Now disabling FG and using quality DLSS instead does deliver higher FPS as well. We're in the 70s and 80s, but it becomes CPU bound again, as you can see. Like, GPU usage is at the 80 to 90% range most of the time. Obviously out there it won't be. It will be at 99% or close to it, and the FPS, of course, will also increase because of the higher GPU utilization, of course. Getting 90s, almost touching 100 FPS sometimes. But I mean, frame generation over native did look a little bit better than this. This is upscaling from 960p resolution. That's what the DLSS quality is doing here. It's 67% or 66% resolution scale. And you can tell, especially with trees at a faraway distance, also, yes, the pop-in is insane. It's hard to believe that these are epic settings with this amount of pop-in, but yes, these are epic settings. It doesn't get better than this, unfortunately. But yeah, there's quite a bit more noise now on the shadows at the distance, but that's about it. It's not a real big deal. Oh, I'm gonna die, I think. No! Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. No, stop eating. Okay, I need a bandage. Actually, I don't need a bandage. I needed a syringe. But yeah, this is it. If you mind having input lag because of the frame generation and you still want higher FPS than native resolution, you should play with DLSS quality. Oh boy, why do you do this to me, Jack? Why do you do this to me? Boy, gosh damn it. Okay, come on. Oh my god. See, it would be a little bit harder, actually, to hit all of these shots. Oh my gosh, so many... so many jacks everywhere. With frame generation enabled because of the input lag, obviously. Oh gosh, okay, I'm panicking a little bit here. There are tons of them. Oh my god. Oh, stop, Jack, stop, please. Why do you do this to me? Okay, there we go. We're fine. That was something. Now, let's enable frame gen over quality DLSS, and this will give you a proper high refresh rate experience. If you have a 144Hz 1440p monitor and you want to get as close as possible to that frame rate, as you can see in some areas you can actually achieve those 140 FPSs. What is this? Wait, I've never been here before. Oh, I can just sit here and play the guitar while looking at that, but I'm not going to play the guitar. This is YouTube, so I'm going to be demonetized if I start doing that. Anyway, I myself would definitely play with DLAA plus FG to avoid the CPU bottlenecking scenarios and to avoid the FPS from dropping from 60 in extreme scenarios, basically. Or I would choose 1440p DLAA without frame generation for the best visuals, as it doesn't really drop too much from 60 FPS. And in the settlement area, I need an energy drink. Oh, this is not an energy drink. I need an energy drink, I said. There we go. Yeah, the settlement area gets us 110s to 120s with a big amount of stuttering still. You can't really do anything about it for now. Hopefully they fix it soon, guys. And now let's go up to 4K resolution 3840 by 2160. I'm going to disable DLSS. I'm going to set it to DLAA here. Frame generation as well. Game is going crazy because I disabled frame generation. And, well, we need to restart. Oh, guys, I just noticed it says Nvidia GeForce RTX. It was a typo, okay, in the on-screen display. Instead of GeForce, I typed GeForce. Doesn't matter, it's a little Easter egg, I guess. Props to those of you who already noticed that. Alright. Anyway, we're getting 40 FPS at 4K native resolution with extreme settings, as you can see. 4K, epic, well, not extreme, epic settings. There are tons of different names for max settings in different games, you know. It gets kind of hard to keep track of, but yeah, it's epic settings. Yeah, 30-something FPS sometimes. Not amazing, obviously, but it's epic settings. If you play, for example, with high settings, it will likely get you 50-something FPS, closer to 60, especially out here, because it gets considerably less intensive on high while looking very similar at the same time, just with a little bit more pop-in, but again, you still have pop-in even on epic settings, so it doesn't really matter. And you know what I'm noticing, guys? A bit less stuttering as well. That frame time graph is a little flatter at the moment. So it seems like the closer you get to a CPU bottleneck, the more stuttering there will be. Alright? And that's probably why this wasn't as smooth as the RX 6800 at 1080p resolution, because that GPU was obviously GPU bound 100% of the time, and this one wasn't. So I think that's what's going on here. A little bit of frame time issues. Still, obviously, it's not going to fix everything whenever you are in CPU bound, but it helps things a little. Let me drink the energy drink right now. Now, with these baseline FPS, playing with frame generation over native is not a good idea whatsoever, of course. You'll need to play around with DLSS to make things better, and I definitely recommend it, because if you use like quality DLSS, things get up into the 60s. Look at that. And it looks kind of the same. I mean, I can see a little bit more aliasing maybe on very distant power lines, for example, and the trees at the distance. There is also slight, very, very slight ghosting effect around faraway trees. I can't really see it actually right now. It's more noticeable. Well, with those, for example, yeah, I can see it. Look at that. But it's more noticeable on like performance DLSS. But the good thing is, you don't need to utilize performance DLSS if you have this GPU. 4070 Ti Super is actually surpassing my expectations a little here at 4K res, alright? I mean, it's not true 4K anymore, but it's quality DLSS with 4K, and it looks pretty insane. It looks 4K. And you know what? Even if it drops into the 50s sometimes in extreme scenarios, like the settlement area, once again, which it will drop, okay? No, there's no way around it. It will always drop whenever you are in the 60s and 70s in terms of FPS, and then you go to the settlement areas. But in the settlement areas, it doesn't really matter too much if you drop into the 50s, because you're not going to kill everybody there if you're not a maniac like I am. And over here, it drops into like the low 50s whenever you're entering the settlement, you know. Over here, it's also dropping into the 50s. So again, you're going to get like 65 to 70 most of the time outside of here, and inside of here, you're going to drop into the 50s. While having very good visuals from 4K resolution, basically. So, not terrible, not great at the same time, but you do have that frame generation that you can utilize. And if you enable this, since the baseline FPS were already around 60, it shouldn't feel too bad, although at 4K it doesn't increase our FPS as much as it did at 1440p. So, input lag-wise, it's a little bit worse. But since this is Nvidia's frame generation, it has a little bit less input lag than AMD's frame generation, and doesn't feel absolutely terrible. I guess you can actually get used to it, and as long as you get 80 plus frames per second all of the time, it should be somewhat decent of an experience in terms of input lag. And I, for example, could definitely get used to this, although again, it's not for everybody. The perceivedness and whether or not the input lag is noticeable is different to everyone, okay? And what is good or acceptable to me might not be to you. So you guys need to figure it out for yourselves if you like the frame generation, if you can handle the input lag, if you can get used to it and so on, or even if you prefer a controller, because with a controller you can't really feel the input lag from the frame generation as long as it doesn't drop below like 70 frames per second. But alright, this is definitely not too bad. 4070 Ti Super still has what it takes to provide a pretty decent experience at 4K resolution, even at 4K resolution. Well, Yes, again, it's not true 4K resolution, but it really looks like native resolution right now. And I'm using a 42-inch monitor. If you're using like a 32-inch monitor, which is more common, it's less likely that you will notice any imperfections. So I'm going to stop it right there for these settings. And the last thing I want to do is turn off frame generation, enable performance DLSS, which will look great again in those 32-inch monitors or lower than that at 4K resolution. Here on a 42-inch, I can definitely start noticing some differences in terms of the visual fidelity. It's a little bit fuzzier, it's a little bit noisier at the distance as well. The ghosting is a little bit more noticeable. There is shimmering on the branches of that tree, for example. But this way you can actually get 60 plus FPS all of the time. And I will tell you guys, on a 4K monitor, performance DLSS looks better than 1440p in a native 1440p monitor. So you still get a little bit more detail and stuff. That's a lot of stuttering while arriving here at the settlement. Oh my god. It's pretty terrible. It's not due to the GPU, it's not due to the VRAM as well, it's just the game once again. As I was saying, even though this is DLSS performance and it's upscaling from 1080p all the way to 4K resolution here in this title, it still looks a lot better than 1440p native on a native 1440p monitor. And that's the beauty of 4K resolution, you know, you can use performance DLSS, which will look awesome in most games. There are some games where it looks a little bit too bad, you know, but this one isn't one of them. It actually looks decent, and I would have no issues playing like this. Remember, this is without frame generation, so it's pretty responsive in terms of input lag. There's no noticeable input lag, really, and it's going to be a great experience. Aside from the huge stutters, of course, which frame generation sometimes lowers the amount of, actually. So you might want to enable FG as well. And of course, especially if you are CPU bound, enable FG so you aren't anymore. I think since it drops into the 90s still and probably 80s around here, yeah, there we go. I think I would probably choose to play with quality DLSS plus frame generation at 4K. But you know what? In terms of the input lag, it's definitely a little bit better than that. So I guess what I would do is, on a 42-inch monitor, since it's so big, I would probably use DLSS quality plus FG with this GPU, and on a 32-inch monitor I would have no problems to play with performance DLSS plus FG with this GPU. But that's been it for this one, guys. Goodbye, Bob. Let's get out of here. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, love you all. Oh my gosh. If you want to play this game with 4070 Ti Super, feel free to do so. It's still going to perform good, even though it's a completely broken title in terms of performance and optimization. But yeah, this GPU has the raw power to pull through, basically. That's been it. Catch you in the next one. Love you all. Bye-bye.